Hey guys, in this video we will be talking about how to create a port scanner similar to Nmap. We will be using Python socket programming. So first let's just use Nmap to scan a server that I have up so we can see what ports are open. So 1 and 2. Cool. So we see that Nmap just shows us a list of ports that are open. Awesome. So we can use Telnet to do a very similar thing to Nmap. Telnet just uses socket programming just as Nmap does. So if we do Telnet, then this port at the end, we can tell that the port is open because we connected successfully. So if we do the same thing with a port that isn't open, we get this unable to connect. So that tells us that the port is closed. So we're going to take that similar concept to create a port scanner in Python. So if I create a file called port scan, and the first thing that we have to do is import the library socket, and that should be already installed. If it isn't, you will have to install that. Next, I'm just going to create a variable to hold the IP that we want to scan. Ideally, you would use command line arguments, but I'm trying to create this with as simple as possible. So we can just put the IP right there, and then to scan each port, similar to how we did it with Telnet, we have to connect to each port separately, which means we'd have to do something like 1, then 2, and then Telnet to port 3, 4, etc. So we can do that in Python just in a for loop. And we can do that by 4, and then port in range, then just I'll do 1 to 100 just to get started. So basically this will loop through 1 through 100, and it'll save the number in the variable port. So port will be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, etc. So then after that, we need to connect to the IP and port. And if the connection fails, we know that the port is closed, and if it doesn't fail, we know that the port is open. So we can do that in a try except statement. So we can try to connect, and if it errors out, we know that the port is closed. And the actual connection part will be done with the sockets library. And just for reference, you probably want to, go to Google, type Python sockets, and then find the documents for it. This isn't the actual documents, but just find some references so that you can get some examples and know the functions that are in this library. So what we're going to do is we are going to connect to create a socket first. This will be a IPv4 TCP socket, and normally you have to add in extra stuff in there. Let me see if I can find it right here. You would have to add in this part, socket.af inet, which stands for IPv4, and then you have socket.sockstream, which stands for TCP. So you could change this to something else if you want to scan for UDP, and change this to scan for IPv6. But we don't have to put that because when it's blank, it is implied that you are scanning IPv4 TCP. So that's awesome. Next, after that, we need to connect to the IP and ports. We can do that just by doing s.connect. Then pass in a list, and we will do the IP, comma, port. So we get the IP from right there, and the port is looping over this range. So we're going to try to connect to port 1 first, then port 2, then port 3. And at the end, we have to make sure that we close this connection. And then let's just, if we get down to all of this and it didn't error out, that means that we connected successfully and that the port is open. If it did error out, that means that the port is closed. So at the bottom of this try statement, we can go ahead and just print this right here, which will just print the ports that are open. So if I run this and if I wrote this successfully, we should be able to scan our server, and it will just be like a regular Nmap scan. Cool. So it sees that port 22 and port 80 are open. Before it showed a lot more ports. Might be asking why is that? Well, that's because we're only scanning 1 through 100. So let's change this to 10,000. And that should bring up everything. Now this is much slower because we're not using threading or anything. We're scanning each port one at a time. If we were using threading, this could go much faster. So that was the output from our port scanner. And now if we just look at Nmap again, just to compare them, Nmap shows that the same ports are open. Nmap does have some additional information. For instance, it identifies port 22 as SSH. That could easily be done in this script as well. You could also add in banner grabbing, support for UDP, threading, a bunch of other stuff. This is just a basic port scanner. It's super small. You can create this in like 60 seconds to get a basic port scanner up and running. You can add on to this and make it something like Nmap. So that's it. Thanks.